Cool.
Okay, hello again. This is our last video where we're reviewing our postmodern Kenpo yellow belt patterns. Again, if you have questions about what you see, we are more than happy. We'll be ecstatic to answer them questions and maybe Zoom a class with you or two. Maybe you can have us out for a seminar, you know, if you're a Kenpo person and you're watching what Mr. Parker decided we were going to be doing as of 88, 89, and 91. Okay, so our three patterns, our three lessons are Mace of Aggression, Attacking Mace, and Sword in Hand, the last three. Mace of Aggression is great because it has a stomp in it that looks like you're keeping a door closed. So your heel's off the ground and you're pressing on the door to keep it from opening. There's also no neutral bow in either the PMK or the CK version. Right, and one of the things that we're going to finally talk about in depth is the idea of striking up to the target, into the target, over the target, and down on the target. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks a little bit like walking set 1 the way we do it. This is the original postmodern Kenpo and Christian Kenpo two-hand grab, then pull as intent. So catalyst and intent, response and intent. What do we intend to do then? We're also going to talk about striking through the target. Whichever way, I mean, I can use my elbow to line up my weapon to the target. And then I'm going to strike down and through. So it's always through and not to. The interesting thing about it is that we're anchoring the elbow. If I do this, and then I come up here and I have the strike here, I'm in the high neutral, and then I come down, I'm going to go to the high close to penetrate through, and then I'm going to come and rotate out to here. There's my high neutral facing 9 o'clock. Then I'm going to strike here as I strike through the target. Okay, I just talked about all the bullet points, so now it's his turn.
Well, with that, as we start talking about this, let's back up, Professor. If Professor Cole grabs me, this is the catalyst. His intent is to... Yeah,
throw my glasses away.
Throw his glasses away. His intent is to pull and to either intimidate me and or pull me in for a headbutt. But as we're doing this, as we're talking about up, in, through, and down, what we're talking about is let's say if this stayed out. I can choose to go up and strike the target. I can go in. I can go over, or I can go down. We notice if you look at the syllabus, the system, and look at how many different techniques are related by taking similar catalysts, but the response is different by either up, in, over, or down, will give you an insight into the formulation that is in the system. Now, I'm going to do the attack on Professor Cole, and I'd like for him to show us the backstop, what we call the backstop, the purposeful use of shifting weight on our feet for the purpose of manipulating height, width, and depth with our opponents. So as the catalyst is going to grab and then pull, as I pull, he's going to purposefully comply. And notice his front foot is up. So as he heel to toes in, as this arm is going to go over and down, his arm comes across, elbow pointing the weapon at the level of the target. As he steps forward, notice there we have a collapsible deflection. As he's going to, I'm going to let go with my left hand. His wrist is going to become a fulcrum point. That any time a circular line meets in the universal pattern can become a pivot point. So then he is going to then choose to use that pivot point to, number one, cancel my zones. And then, oh look, where is the closest weapon to closest target? Boom, the elbow. As he reaches across, once again, continuing to cancel my zones, Notice there, he's not just going 2 with that thrusting punch, with the inward elbow and the outward elbow. It is always through and not 2. Professor, no, if you stand, just stand here. If I want to, Professor Cole, I could go just 2. That's fine if you're slicing, or if you're using a different weapon that doesn't require yourself to be a pugilist. But in most cases in Kenpo, let's say I'm going to form a palm heel. I want to not just go 2, I am going to go through. Notice there, my arm isn't straight. I still have a range of motion in this arm. If I really wanted to go through, I would make contact and then go, where's my hand? That's where his face would be. We get this, thank you, Dr. Dave Crouch, for reinforcing the lesson of through and not to. In this technique, I'm not just going boom, boom, boom. It's 1, 2, 3. Notice the elongation of his body, and he's going to have to borrow balance on me, or else the professor's going to go on the floor. So this idea of in, 2, over, and down applies including our strikes. As we start talking about the catalyst and intent, his intent is to do something else. I need to respond. And this is what we would call a when, and then the intent comes in, then. Notice I still have a lot of range of motion in my arm. I could continue going backwards. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and talking about
But
also.
that's a me thing.
Yeah.
Yours is that's a you thing.
Yeah. What Professor is talking about here is talking about the difference in the weapon. For me, I am an extender to a gatherer, and Professor is a gatherer to an extender. But what we mean by that is when I'm using that thrust punch, I'm using in between my middle knuckles to contact and to extend. Professor would use more of a raking motion with the outside of his knuckles across the bridge of the nose. This is the difference between height and method. Each individual Kenpoist is going to have their, shall we say, tailor the system to themselves based on height and ranges. Maybe if Professor Cole was doing this and methods, if guys are bigger than you, you might use more of my method versus...
Or if I was sitting down.
Or if he was sitting down in a wheelchair or in a chair. This is what we call the true method of tailoring. As we start talking about this, I also really want to emphasize that anchor to the elbow. Using Professor?
The fulcrum.
The fulcrum.
They won't see it.
As we move here, and here's the catalyst and then the intent. Notice I've already manipulated his depth and a little bit of his height just with the over and down of my left arm. Now, as I manipulate his width and height one more time, I'm going to use this not only as a strike, but I'm digging into his bicep muscle. I want to bring it down and actually hit on top of the radial nerve. As I do so, notice his grimace. That's perfect to bring up this elbow. I'm going to use this point and dig in with this little bony part of my wrist right here. It's great for digging into sensitive areas like the radial nerve just above the elbow. Comments, Professor?
One of the factors that I remember from this lesson is that he's going to do this again, and he's going to make me so short that he's going to be able to use my method to come across, because that's the through, not the to. This has limitations as far as you can extend the arm. But if you strike into something and then go through it, look at how far I was able to go, and then boom, I drop. So he's going to use the way I would do it. This is the base technique, okay? But he wants to do it a different way, so he has to make me short. As I do so, as I
bring him to. I want to bring him down because I want to be able to flap this elbow.
This is where I end up. Not always this drastic. Maybe here, but definitely short enough so that he needs to use the method that I would choose. He's going to bring me down so that his weapon doesn't have to do this.
It's not David and Goliath. David brings Goliath down to David's height. Yep, and then throws the stone.
Yeah, Goliath ain't that tall when he's on his back, is he?
No. Any other comments on Mace of Aggression before we slip off into attacking Mace?
Well, yeah, I would caution you against students. Oh, two things. Hip line. This has to happen. The moment they grab, you need to do this. And you can pick up the heel if you want. But I would caution you against doing a knee strike, because if he's grabbing and pulling, and I'm on one foot, grab it, grab and pull. And I decided to go with the knee strike, what does he have to do to mess me up? Where's my strikes? So yes, in the studio, in a demonstration, the knee is nice, but it's an insert. It doesn't have anything to do with the original tint of the pattern. So I caution you with that.
Also, the hip line, if you guys hopefully will have noticed, if Professor grabs, and I'm just going to use the left arm method, notice as I'm going in, over, and down, what's happening with my hips? What have I affected with just the rotation of my hips and then my elbow digging in? I've now created what we call a double negative. I'm corkscrewing him into the ground even before my right hand enters the discussion, or even really before I have stepped.
I had a long day, you guys. I'm not feeling it great.
Yeah. With that, I think those are our major notes when talking about Mace of Aggression. Is once again, talking about up, in, over, and down, using the backstop stomp, the fact that there really is no neutral bow. I am purposely complying with his pull, and I am going to step in, if anything, into maybe an aggressive preparatory stance. As we talk about that, this is the original postmodern Kenpo catalyst and intent. This is what sparked the discussion of, is it just a push? Is it just a grab? Is it a push, grab, or pull? What is the method by which the catalyst begins our response? And as we start also talking about through and not to, as well as anchoring the wrist at a vital area, whether it's the elbow, whether it's the radial nerve right above the elbow, or whether it is the radial nerve just on the lower part of the elbow, right at, shall we say, the hill of the forearm, are great spots to use as an anchor point for that elbow.
One last thing. If you're into jiu-jitsu and you don't understand this as a Kenpo jiu-jitsu system, just lay down on your back, have somebody get on top of you in the mount. They've got a hold of you. Do this pattern. Lock your legs around their body and just do this pattern. And then when you do the downward portion, rock your hips, and then just come back with that. So it's a rock left, rock right, rock right. Just think about it in terms of jiu-jitsu. Does it work down there?
So
why not?
In taking that same idea, for those of you who do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or other forms of wrestling, think of it as if I were on my back and Professor were on top, think of it like shrimping, where you're hooking the legs and getting away, but at the same time responding. Kenpo isn't just a vertical art. The same thing can be applied horizontally. The same thing, especially, big props to Dr. Dave Crouch, for finger set. Practice finger set while laying down on the ground and think about its applications as far as the ground game.
One thing about that when you're on your back is that you don't have thrusting motions. Everything is a snap. Of course, there's whipping and there's thrusting in the set, but you want to snap these things so that you can come back down to the hand. You may pin, you may come in and you go to the eyes. If you trash their eyes, I don't know when you call that a mercy point. I would call it get off of me. Just another thought. Oh, and thanks to Professor Clyde O'Brien for everything that he did for me that I was able to help Sifu Stewart, Chris, with along the way. If it hadn't been for him, a lot of the things that I understand now wouldn't be viable.
And now we move on to attacking mace. And attacking mace is one of those techniques, no matter how you do it. The first and primary point that I would like to make today is the thrusting inward block and its differentiation between the hammering inward. If you guys do short form 1, and as I'm sitting here in preparatory ready for short form 1, what is the first block do you use? Is it both thrusting inward blocks, or are they a hammering and then a thrusting? As in postmodern Kenpo, we do it step back naturally, hammering inward, thrusting inward. Two very distinct motions, as Mr. Parker both described them and showed them in his many seminars and in the encyclopedia. Attacking mace is one of those benchmarks for the remainder of the formulation of the system that relates to other techniques in which affect, we've got Dance of Death, we've got Thundering Hammers, we've got flashing wings, we've got a sleeper. All of these techniques are built on the basis of step and then thrusting inward block, whether it's step forward or step back. So in this particular case, the thrusting inward block, if we're just going to show the first part. As Professor Cole comes in, as I step back, I'm going to contact at the wrist. I'm going to rigid my arm, and his friction is going to push the weapon off target. If it weren't for his shoulder, my fist would go into his head. Once again, as it comes in with a little bit of intent, it stops at his shoulder. Now, could I ricochet off of his shoulder, his trap, and blast the maxillary hinge? Yeah, I could. Or blast the eardrum, or whatever, the closest weapon, closest target, right? But here, I don't have to worry about that arm. That then allows me to respond with what we would call, once again, I'm not really in a neutral bow. If I really want to, I could be in my high neutral bow. Now I'm going to make it an aggressive neutral bow. I'm going to use a 45-degree punch, down and in. Oh. Notice my back heel is up. This is the high neutral bow. Where did it send him?
The hospital.
The combination of the thrusting inward block into the aggressive neutral bow means I might not get the rest of the technique. This is where snippets of action are important. That was one snippet. Yeah, that was one snippet of attacking mace. So, once again, as he comes in, we're going to get in position, thrusting. Turns him, right? Cancels the second weapon. Aggressively, the aggressive neutral bow places him here. Now, because of the length of my legs, in the base technique, normally we would what? We're going to check off, and no, this isn't Star Trek. We're going to check off the arm, and we're going to pull down and across to allow for a roundhouse kick. In the base pattern, as originally taught from the 70s into the mid-80s. But as we have introduced, for those of us that might have a little bit longer legs, something called a gauge leg.
Let's do it with my leg punches.
Yeah. So, Professor's going to come in with the right. Notice it stopped at his shoulder. Aggressive. As I contour, also using a rolling check, I'm going to go down and across. My left foot is now going to step away to open up, not a roundhouse. I'm going to contour up his leg and do a ball peen. As I land, I'm going to step down and across, inside and over. I don't even need the uppercut to the kidney. If I really want to be nasty, as I come down I'm going to scrape the inside and stomp off the top of the foot and down and in, and then pop. And then there's all kinds of fun snippets.
But that's completing the pattern, but it's all the snippets of action that are important that comprise it. This is why we call them constructs. They are constructed to teach things at the beginning level.
So when breaking this down, we get the thrusting inward, and then we introduce something. When we show our students, whether it's PMK or CK, traditionally we're taught the horizontal punch, the two-knuckle punch, whatever terminology you want to use, it being on line 2.
Or the steering wheel.
Or yeah. What we have introduced...
Another CK concept that has gone into that.
Another Christian Kenpo concept that has gone backfilled into postmodern Kenpo is teaching our beginning students their first set of blocks as on a steering wheel.
Punches.
Those punches go on the steering wheel because on a steering wheel, normally, unless our seat's all the way back, our arms aren't straight, right? Normally our elbows are more relaxed. What did that do to my hands? I'm no longer on line 2, 3 to 9. They have now gone, what, 10:30 and 1:30 on the clock, which means that my hands are now shaped in a 45-degree fashion and not a horizontal fashion, excuse me, a horizontal fashion. Now then when we move from the 45-degree punches, then I have my students go to 3 and 9 on the steering wheel, which introduces the thrust punch, the vertical punch. And then they go to 4:30 and 7:30 on the steering wheel. Notice the elbows are in. It's elbow-centric. It goes to 4:30 and 7:30, which we call the uppercuts or inverted punch. This is CK backfilling into PMK. So with this punch, once I step back and have my high neutral bow thrusting inward, I'm going to use the aggressive neutral bow and use a 45-degree down and in. We're combining both the method and direction when talking about the punch. 45-degree, down and in. Professor, you want to describe how it was maybe originally taught to you in 79, 80?
Oh, I didn't know this until like 1991.
Oh, 1991. Okay.
And the lessons that my instructor gave me was that when I have my block out here and I go to the punch, if I go to the ribs, I'm most likely going to make him go away so that I can catch up. His arm hit my leg, thereby canceling any power, any focus. But when I punch down and in, then I come over to here, I've got a target all day. But if he grabs, he can actually grab that leg. I come here, I punch his ribs, and I throw the kick, and guess what? Bad idea. Okay? Just a bad idea. Because you got to go beyond what it is that you learned as a yellow belt and say, what does it look like as a black belt? What are my considerations? You know, all those wonderful 8 considerations. Because if it can happen, it will happen. But if you're only into completing the pattern and not understanding the snippets, then you're probably going to make a big mistake at some point, thinking that you can complete the pattern.
Well, and I also want to talk about unintended consequences, right? We're dealing in our society with a lot of folks that might have done cardio kickboxing or have done MMA, in which they're going to want to gather or to grasp. We want to cancel height, width, and depth, giving us time and preventing unintended consequences. Thank you, Clyde. We also want to talk about quickly, something we didn't talk about in the walkthrough, was the double tap motion. So, as Professor Cole comes in,
Switch.
I cancel width and depth. I'm going to down and in.
I think we need to switch. I think that's it.
Yeah, this would be a good idea to switch. As we're here, I am going to actually double tap motion. Notice where that sent him. I might not have anything else, especially if, especially if he continues to press towards me, right? I am going to double tap. I actually hit and slightly grabbed right here, right just below the elbow, and popped above the elbow. I let go on purpose. If I really hold on to Professor and lift up, I can then come down and in. Oh, look, it becomes
Lone kimono.
long kimono on the opposite side. Anyways, yeah. This is the double tap. But also what the double tap allows me is to make sure that then when I contour, frictional pull down and in, I'm canceling the second arm. And oh, hey, nice, beautiful kidney. Oh, hey, yeah, I want you. This is we are making the point, not earning the point. Making the point, not earning the point.
Oh my. That's a sparring vernacular. But this can be a sparring technique if you want it. All you have to do is be in your fighting stance. There's the block. There's the pattern. You can use snippets, but your front arm is already out there. You've already done the block, or you put the arm in the way so that it is on the line of entry. They have to then work around it, right? But because I'm sparring, I'm here. And of course, closest weapon, lock it in, 1, 2. It's a sparring technique. We use it in Orange County all the time. I used to.
Also from the side, I wanted to show you guys in the air the gauge leg. So, step back, thrusting inward. I'm going to aggressive neutral bow, double tap as I pull down and across for me to allow a line of entry. I'm going to gauge leg. Notice what that did with my hips. Instead of being square, I've opened my hips. I'm going to turn my knee and my foot on the line of my target. Introduces what we call the ball peen kick. It's a combination of a front ball kick and your traditional roundhouse kick meets somewhere in the middle, in which you're going to use the ball of your foot. And it's so sneaky. Sir, would you, right neutral bow. As I'm here, notice I've got a nice contour up to I want to hit his bladder, just above his belt buckle. I am going to, as I step up, I can get that all day long. Even if you would zombie for me, sir, even if his arms are up, or even take a fighting position, I'm going to get there every time. And it nicely contours up and over to my intended target. That is the ball peen kick.
And the thing we're going to reveal to the world at this point, the chamber is the rising of the knee, as opposed to up, out, back, and down with all other kicks. This is a total cheat, where all you have to do is aim the knee, lift the foot, and it's going to hit your target. So we're giving away something that I hope everybody understands, because it works better in this pattern if you do it that way.
Any other closing comments on attacking Mace?
No.
No,
Great lesson.
We hit the lessons. Each of these bullet points are what we call the lessons. These are at the bottom on our notes. These are the things that we want our students to get within each of the patterns, within each of the techniques, that will relate both looking forward and filter back through the whole rest of the system. As we start to hit sword and hammer, as we start talking about sword and hammer, Professor wanted to talk about relation to other obscure techniques in which distance is a key. I'm going to come to this side.
Kenpo people know, but they know this as this. We call it choo-choo training for the kids. What he's going to do basically, yeah, right there. And then I'll put the hand up for the obscure elbow.
Yeah. Oh, the same technique. All right. See, communication's good.
Okay, so we step there. The attack is there. It's basically 6 o'clock with a cross hand grab or pressure, you know. And then we go to circling wing, where the left hand is here. I'm going to grab his collar. And where he steps, and the stance that he steps to is really important. Yeah, he's using a high neutral. And so this stuff works everywhere. But he's in the neutral. He hasn't shown me. It's not a reverse ball. He isn't showing me what I'm going to do, what he's going to do. Go ahead. Sorry. I let go. Do it again. Not so hard. Capture it. Capture it. Capture it. Capture it. Capture it. Oh, we don't edit. Oh, God. Okay.
This is the end of the pattern for me.
Yeah.
I just lock this in here.
Okay.
You're gonna walk with me.
But the point of this is not whether we get the pattern off. We're not completing the pattern or breaking my glasses. But we have looked at these patterns and we have said they're not all standing in the same place. And the next one we're going to do is, we're going to say sword and hammer for the last one. Let's go with obscure claws. Now I'm standing at on his 430. Pins, strikes, circles, and captures. Oh my goodness. And I'm still here. He hasn't pulled me yet. Comes through. Ugh. He should. For me, I'm an out to in kind of guy. So when he grabs me, okay, from there, pin, aim the elbow. There's an elbow strike. There's a claw. There's a peel off, and then there's this. Okay? And then I simply come up to here in front of him. Then I put my weight forward, and look what happens to him. He's on his toes, right? And then I'm simply going to smack and smack. But this is the gatherer way to do it. The way I do it. So what we got is attack from here, straight behind. We have an attack from behind, but to the left, 45. And then we have an attack where the arm is straight. Maybe they kind of started, they prefixed the grab with a small push, right? And then the last one. We're going to cover that now.
And sword and hammer, the important thing as we've dictated, and this is one time I will definitely agree.
I said something incorrect.
Yeah.
Well, I said something incorrect about obscure wing. So this is here because he doesn't have to extend itself. He just moves back. This is here because he wants me to go this way into his neutral. And this is about here with the elbow bend, basically the same kind of elbow bend, so that when he does the claw, he gets both claws. Go ahead. Claw, claw, claw. Oh, shit. Yeah, the pattern's there, trust me. Now we're going to the extended catalyst, which is sword. Let's turn around. We're just going to show it to you. Well, let's turn this way so they can see a comma. We're going to do the thing called the comma step. So watch down here. This hurts, guys. My arm is extended. I'm in the same line of attack as I was in obscure wing. I'm going to turn this way. Yeah, my shoes.
No, that's fine.
No, you can hit that way.
So the comma step is I'm going to literally draw a comma around his leg. As I step in and behind, I actually want to scrape the heel joint into the ground. And then my heel will touch his heel, my knee will touch his knee, and then my hip or my thigh will touch his. Notice I'm affecting his height and width with just my leg. Next, I'm going to, as I rotate, look at what it does.
Oh, I can't stay there.
I can't stay there. So before he goes away, I'm going to point the elbow at my target. This is the contouring chop. As I continue this rotation, I'm going to settle into my high neutral bow and
I'm going to dummy for you guys so that you get an understanding. This is a great pattern to understand how the dummy is moving. His arm is extended. All right. You step behind his leg. It starts this motion right here. And then when you put your weight on that foot, it makes him turn even more. Hello. Cancel. And then the chop comes and it really straightens my arm. And then the hammer fist that contours down the body. He's got to be careful because I have a brass buckle. And he goes to the final high neutral as he drops the hammer, and I just go straight down. In fact, we're both in a high neutral because I can't go in. He's not going to drop to a horse stance to do this. He's going to just leave the heel up so that he can strike through.
so this introduces the comma step, which is actually a backfill from the Christian Kenpo technique obscure kimono. You guys, most of you American Kenpo guys will know it as a part of short to long to. As I step behind, then I rotate vertical outward, and for us, afford either a vertical punch or a 45-degree punch. This is the catalyst for this is another shoulder grab. That once again, sword and hammer and the other later techniques help us to backfill what we learned in short to long to. But as we discussed that the elbow aims the weapon, as you guys have noticed, if he is on this side, I calm a step. I've manipulated width and height. I'm going to aim. I'm still contouring. My elbow is contouring his body to point my elbow at my target, and then comes the chop. Not, unlike in Taekwondo with lifting kicks, in Kenpo we don't have lifting strikes. Aim the elbow at the level of the target. Yes. Comment, Professor, on that one.
Yeah, what he just said, aim the elbow. It's also raise the elbow to the level of the target. Because it's, obviously, I'm going to use this as his head. I'm just, if I come here, right? I'm sorry, if I come here, all I get is up. But if I come here, put your hand up there. Yeah, open. If I come here and hit his arm, I can hit like that. And I'm going to hit with the bending of the wrist, right? And then I go down. That's why you do that. Aim, elbows rise to the level of the strike.
Elbows aim to the level of the strike. This is something that from some of the first lessons our students take. There's a phrase in which we use in PMK and a CK. That hips control feet, feet control hands. Knees aim kicks, and elbows aim strikes. That is a truism that finds itself in sword and hammer and in the rest of the system. Now, I wanted to talk about quickly unintended consequences in sword and hammer. So for instance, since we have been using the idea of a jiu-jitsu guy, step behind, let's say I come here and he captures, or he snakes this arm underneath, and oh boy, I've recatalyzed myself, right? I am now basically in, I can name about 10 different Kenpo techniques. I have recatalyzed him. So what is it that I'm going to do to prevent this? What is it that is going to prevent the recatalyzation? Number one, there's this, the lower half motion. But also is remembering, this is not a Kodak moment. This is not cha-ching, come look at my perfect neutral bow. No, I'm not in a neutral bow, I'm in a high neutral bow. Yeah, as I rotate, watch what it cancels. Oof. It cancels his secondary response. If he wants to do something with this, hey, what technique is this?
A snippet of action from
Yeah, snippets of action, not graphic.
I'm hungry.
She's hungry.
Yeah. Continue, Professor.
Okay, so these are the last three of the yellow belt patterns where we are reviewing the system of postmodern Kenpo and how it is being influenced by the concepts and principles that were developed in Christian Kenpo. That high neutral and the high aggressive neutral, I'm more of a high aggressive neutral, he's more of a high neutral, because there are certain PMK patterns where you're doing stuff like this and you can't be aggressive and do it because you work across your body too much. But if you're here and you're here and here, look, there's high neutrals all over the freaking place. Because at my age, I'm not going to drop down even to a high close or a high wheel, high kneel. I'm certainly going to have a hard time getting up from a high close or a high kneel. High close or high wide kneel stance. So, aiming the elbow has the nice effect of stretching him out. First of all, it's going to get him to turn his shoulder. We want to compromise the shoulder. And then hitting the arm. I mean, just hit the elbow pit if you want, or shorten it to come to here. Make sure that your wrist is like this. Don't be like this because it changes the weapon, the target or the method of the weapon. And then just simply follow that line, the line you created, by striking into the arm if you choose to strike into the arm.
So this reinforces path of action versus line of action. It reinforces path of action versus a line of action. We talk about a path of action, and we talk about a line of action. Important differences in the rest of the formulation of the system. Sword and Hammer is kind of the abbreviated lessons, shall we say, of Yellow Belt. Sword and Hammer is going to influence the rest of the obscure shoulder grabs in the whole rest of the system. That you're going to see lessons that were taken from later catalysts backfilled into Yellow Belt, as we talked about earlier.
So basically, what we're trying to say to you is that if you're already doing these things, I applaud you, because you may have found them out on your own. We had the fortune enough to work with Pat Solantri. I did, then he did, then my son and I did. So at some point, these things are true. Just the fact that you're raising up the arm, right? It's an outward elbow to a chop. So it's a line to a path. If we're doing a path only, it can be stopped. He's right here, and if he knows to keep his hand up in the check because he doesn't want to get punched, then all you have to do is stop. All you have to do is palm heel it. And all of a sudden, unintended consequences, he then simply stands in front of you and grabs your arm in
Crossing talons.
crossing talons, if he knows that. So you're more dangerous than you think you are. It's just you have to look at it from both sides of the coin. Your catalyst and intent, and their response and intent.
With that, in closing the first 10 Yellow Belts, techniques, the backfill formulation from the system that was already present at the time. Now in going through it with the revisions of the high neutral bow, of things like elbows, aim weapons, and looking at it as also some of the Clyde-isms and Dr. Dave-isms and Pat-isms that have come in to us and through us, filter in back into the whole rest of the system, which is exciting, which is, as Professor Cole was commenting yesterday, the fact that things look fresh, things look new.
Yeah, they do.
The comment I was trying to make earlier was that this is one of the cases I'll really agree with Kenpo Joe Rebello, that number one, no two attacks are the same, no two of the same catalysts or intents, and also the position of our attacker on the clock is always different. I've started to map this out. I actually have a map for Yellow Belt in which there's no two spots on 360 degrees within the circle are the same in all of Yellow Belt. Think about that as you're going back through your manuals. You're looking at those lessons. You're looking at the distance for shoulder grabs. You're looking at the distance. For instance, whether bear hugs, arm free, or arms pinned, whether the attacker is on our left half or our right half, whether his hip is out, whether his hip is close. These are the differences in each of our Kenpo techniques that we need to pay serious attention to and not just say, well, a punch is a punch. No, there's different methods, there's different distances, there's different timing. These are the differences that take us from a brown belt, just trying to grok the system, and instructors understanding, and especially as professors, professing the system. Closing comments for Yellow Belt?
This has been a lot of fun. I wish I had not had to go to work today and work so hard. My body just doesn't like this very much. But we accomplished what we sat down and talked about 5 weeks ago. And we're not going to be doing the orange belts. That's up to you guys to give us a call, show us your techniques on video, and either through text or through Zoom. Zoom is probably be better because we can set up a good time. If this is interesting to you, remember that you are watching things that have influenced, not just from Pat Solantri and who his instructor were, but many people who have worked with Larry Tatum, many people have worked with a lot of Mr. Parker's black belts, and it's all information that if we don't give it to you, I don't think it'll get out. I'm not going to live forever. My numbers are less forward than they are back. Thank you, Creator, for the day. You don't have to give me another one, but hey, it's been a heck of a run. So remember, we're here to help, we're here to talk, we're here to do whatever you want.
With that, thank you, Professor Cole, for helping to walk us through all of this. Good job. If you can't tell, we have a heck of a lot of fun together. And it's been that way for 11 years now. And it's been the best 11 years of, or actually, coming up on 12. Best 12 years of my martial arts training, I'll tell you that. But with that, catch you guys later.